have a crystal ball. We're submitting this into many, many courts. Over 100 of them right now have this document. Many different judges, many different prosecutors are receiving this. Every one of them is going to react a little bit differently towards this document. Now, in the end, if you take the document far enough, you continue to stand, you don't submit, you will win. attorney and you're pro se. And you have to go back in and say, no, I'm not pro se, I'm sui juris. And they'll come back and they'll say, you're pro per, which means a professional in their persona, proper persona. Okay? And you want to say, no, I'm sui juris. Once you tell them 3 times, they pretty much have to allow you to be sui juris. The same goes for them. They can ask you anything 3 times. That's why in this document, throughout this document, I try and cover everything 3 times in 3 different ways to answer the role of 3. Okay? So, this document in its entirety is a living testimony in the form of an affidavit. Why do we put it as a living testimony? 1, because it's coming from a man or a woman. In the form of an affidavit is unrebutted. An affidavit is a statement of truth. And when unrebutted, it becomes a judgment in the case. So, they are said, you will not judgment your affidavit. Once your affidavit is judgmented, it becomes very powerful. Okay? It's a challenge of your rights, status, standing, and jurisdiction. Why do we challenge jurisdiction? Because when we challenge jurisdiction, there's no statute of limitations on jurisdiction. You can challenge it at any time. And when you challenge jurisdiction, a court can even determine its own jurisdiction. And you're going to see as we go along that it is up to you to determine your jurisdiction. Let them know what that is, and it's their job to obey this. It is also a notice of discovery of fraud and impropriety. See, the same thing goes for fraud. Once fraud is recognized and learned, it must be vitiated. Everything is voided from the beginning. Therefore, this is also an estate. It is designed to dismiss the case, to make you whole. It's also a notice of demand for remedy and a claim for compensation. Now, you may have to follow up with that after that, but we're letting them know. We're putting them on notice so we can charge them with crimes and we can charge them for compensation. Okay. We always notice principal is notice to agent. Notice to agent is notice to principal. Why do we do that? Because if we give it to a court clerk, it's the same as giving it to a judge. If we give it to a CPS worker, it's the same as giving it to the agency. If we give it to a police officer, it's the same as giving it to the President of the United States. They are all government. Or supposed to be. They're really not. They're privately held for-profit businesses. So it's hard for me to even say that with a straight face. Okay. I hereby pray to God for relief. Why do we pray to God? Most attorneys will know to pray to the courts. We don't pray to the courts. The courts are public service. It's a place where we go for justice. We pray to our God and the administrator as a public servant of we the people to read this thoroughly, completely, and with comprehension. This document is of a very serious nature and is not frivolous. So we're actually, right off the bat, becoming the boss, talking to our employees, our public servants, giving them the order to read it with comprehension, and read it completely. And we're telling them that serious is not frivolous. Why? Because if they don't do their job that we tell them to do, we might have to fire them. And so it is serious. Now this next paragraph is probably the most important paragraph of the whole thing. And it says there will be no presumptions or assumptions, no tacit agreements, no waiver of rights, no hearsay, no lawyering or adjournment from the bench. Why a drug dealer when you're not, or you've been taking drugs when you didn't, or you were drunk when you weren't, or you're driving down the road in a motor vehicle, or you're traveling in your automobile, okay, or you beat your kid when you did. There will be no waiver of rights. That means to tell them you have rights. Now, do citizens have rights? They have civil rights. They have privileges. But only men and women have unalienable rights. Only American state nationals. What is an American state national? It's an Oregonian, Texan, Floridian, Wisconsin. That is what an American state national is. It is someone who created government, not a citizen who was created by government. There will be no hearsay. Why is hearsay such an important word in the law? Why? Because everything they're doing to you is basically hearsay. Did they have a first-hand witness who will swear under the oath, under the penalty of perjury, that you did what they're claiming you did? 99 out of 100 times, they will not have a first-hand witness. And they will definitely not have a cooperating witness. So therefore, they're basing their entire case off hearsay. Even a police officer or a CPS worker who shows up to your door and then testifies in court that you beat your kid, they didn't see it happen. Therefore, it's hearsay. Okay? They did not see it happen. They were not a first-hand witness. There will be no lawyering or attorney from the bench. When you say that, what you're doing is you're telling the administrator that it is not up to him to seek a prosecution, legal advice, or remove your evidence, or remove your witness. You're there to defend yourself. You have the right to all your witnesses and all your evidence and all your defense. That's called due process of law. So they can't just willy-nilly make random decisions that they're not going to hear this or that if you've given support. And that's what that line means. I am asked only for truth, facts, honor, and fairness. Isn't that what we all want? We just want the truth. We want facts. We want to live with honor and want fair justice. You see, they have a motto that says, no fact or truth shall be tried in court. They base everything on presumption, assumption, and hearsay. There are two rights which we have to stand on in order to move along in the court in the proper manner. The first thing we have to do is stand upon our right of self-determination. It is the foundational stone of all human rights. It allows us to determine our status, standing in our jurisdiction, not then. We invoke our right of redress of grievances. Why is that? That's because we have a right to be heard. We have a right for them to listen. Okay? And we have a right to say things and bring us back that they're doing wrong without retribution or punishment, as long as we stand firmly upon that right of redress of grievances. I hereby stand as a belligerent claim upon these rights as required. Wow, most people are telling you to be nice, to be peaceful. I'm telling you to be nice and be peaceful. The word belligerent does not mean to be rude. What belligerent means is to stand proud, to stand firm, to not give in, to make yourself known, to be a man or a woman. Mama Teresa is belligerent, okay? Especially when have an attorney who supposedly represents you, you are declared a ward of the state or a ward of the court. You are incompetent, unable to speak for yourself. So you're going to tell me that an attorney who spent a couple of hours with you knows your situation, knows what happened better than you do? No, they do not. In fact, they sworn an oath to protect and uphold the court, crown, and other members of the bar. They have not sworn an oath to protect and uphold your rights or your interests. It is valid only when insisted upon by belligerent claimant in first. Okay, there's multiple cases that say that and listed there. Now I'm going to skip some of this just for the sake of time, because what we're doing is we're just hammering that home to them. Okay, we want to make sure they know what we're talking about. The only thing necessary for evil triumphs is for good men to do nothing. And that's what century is. They don't expect us to be interested in sports and football and TV shows and music and play video games and not stand. We need to stand up. If we want to change this world and stop them from taking our neighbor's kids or our kids or rolling over us, we have to stand up. The presumption of liberty, rights we retain for ourselves, freedom lies in everyone's heart, but it must be more than just lies in it. Just to hold on. Okay, now, I bring up a couple of things. I'm not a big fan of the United Nations, but I am a big fan, I said this before, of their Human Rights Department, because they're bringing it forward into the world stage, and it's our government that are ignoring it. So, I do an act here of the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I put the preamble for the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Why? Because these are treaties. These are treaties the United States has signed. In fact, 174 countries have signed these treaties. Treaty is supreme law. Our Constitution and our treaties are supreme law. All of our state constitutions and our federal constitutions and any treaty. Superior law is God's law. So I also use God's law throughout this document. By the grace of God Almighty, and through the supremacy clause of the Constitution, and with all of the treaties of supreme law, it is I alone who shall determine my status, standing, honor, and jurisdiction. For the sake of time, I hereby invoke and stand upon all, whether it's your mother signing your birth certificate or fatwa throughout this document. By the grace of God Almighty, and through the supremacy clause of the Constitution, and with all of the treaties of supreme law, it is I alone who shall determine my status, standing, honor, and jurisdiction. if you're not standing upon them. If you stood upon them and you know what to say, then these guys can't bother. Okay? In fact, once you can show them your proper papers, they're not even allowed to speak anyway anymore. You have limited diplomatic immunity. So the next paragraph says, I hereby forever stand firm upon these natural rights, giving the free man of God, one of we the people, the state national, limited diplomatic immunity as per the Geneva Convention, and that he has done no harm to another. If you have unknowingly harmed another, let that person come forward. Now, living man, woman, or child come forward under oath, under the penalty of perjury, and then you can ask for repentance, seek forgiveness, and make amends or rebut. And that gives you the opportunity for justice. Somebody is actually claiming that you did something wrong to them. And they need to come forward. And that way it gives you a chance to defend yourself or make amends. And I go through. The state didn't really create anything that is real and living. It was God who created me. It was God who endowed my parents with the ability to co-create with Him to bring me into this world and to raise me. The government public servants are trustees. I am the beneficiary. One of we, the people, creators of government. Now, what the Constitution has to say about our rights. And then I go into Bill of Rights of the Constitution. I'm not going to read that all to you. You need to read it. You need to understand it. You need to know your rights. You need to know where they're written down, and you need to know to bring them up. One of the rights you have is no one has a greater right to their child than you do. Not the government, not CPS, not some family you don't know or never heard of. No one has a greater right to your child than you. So you need to stand up and demand that right and keep your kid under your arm. This is the public officer's contract, the Constitution. The Constitution is a compact, is a contract that was written and adopted by this state to hold the government to provide us with 19 essential governmental services and no more. That's what we have to understand, that contract, what that binds, who that is binding to. It is not bound to the citizen, other than Article 14, which created the United States citizen. Here I shall stand, rescinding all past contracts, agreements, or waiver of rights for the cause of fraud. This is where if they've got you to sign something, and they all have, whether it's your mother signing your birth certificate, or you signing your child's birth certificate, or applying for a Social Security card, or a voter's ID, or a driver's license, or a protective order, or a TPR, you're going to rescind all those contracts for cause of fraud. If you've signed a plea deal, anything, if you give any power of attorney to someone, you can rescind all of that for fraud. Why? Because there was no full and honest disclosure, no meeting of the minds. This is where your first middle is separated by a semicolon in your last name, because you're talking about the living man or woman. Hereby repudiate, revoke, and rescind any waiver I may have previously made of these rights, unknowingly, unwittingly, under duress, under coercion, forced upon me through fearful scare tactics, under lies, under any false assumptions or presumptions, or through any perceived tacit agreement. We talked a little last time about tacit agreement. Hopefully everybody understands what that is. It's simply, usually without you even knowing a police officer or a judge gets your tacit agreement of you being a citizen, a person, or a resident within the first 60 seconds in a courtroom or walking up to your window of your car. Or by any signature which may have been used by a fictional corporate officer. That's you. That's you being a fictional officer of your corporation, that entity that was created upon your birth for office. That was registered by your all caps name as a vessel lost at sea or a transmitting utility created by government and recorded as human resources and used as human capital by an investment bond or note. Created in a dog loss of name. That's your all caps name. Now, the Department of Human Resources of your state registers you, it bonds you, insures you as human capital. You can look up executive orders that say this. There's many acts of Congress that say this. We're not making this stuff up. It's out there. This entity, this custom number they're using, is registered through the United States Treasury bonds. It's a full-faith credit of the United States government. Treasury bonds are issued upon everyone's birth. They're bundled into an LEI and regulated by the SEC. And you can look those up in Fidelity or GMEI Utilities website. Now, we have the unlimited right to contract. These contracts can be made with anyone. As a man or a woman, we can contract with anyone we want to contract with. We just need to make sure that contract is fair, honest, has full disclosure, and it meets the 8 elements of the contract, which is listed later on in the talk. I'm going to skip a lot of this stuff in here. I expect you guys to read this over and over and over and over so that you know it. Okay? They cannot take away anyone's right to contract. A right to contract is a property right. Okay? But we can rescind the contract that they have given us that they did not give us full and honest disclosure of. And they lie about everything. Everything. They just say, oh, you just need to take this drug test. You just need to pass this competency hearing. You just need to do this or that, and then we'll return your kid. And then 18 months goes by and it's yard. Even though you did everything you were supposed to do. They don't care. It's not in their best interest to give your child back to you. They're a for-profit business. They're not going to give their product away. And that's what they're doing. Now, if 2 or more come to your door, if a CPS agent comes with a police officer or 2, that is a conspiracy against your right. Okay? It's under Title 18, Section 241, and it is a felony. And they can be fined or imprisoned. What they are doing is they're operating under the color of law to deprive you of your rights. The Supreme Court of the United States says rules, codes, statutes, ordinances are not law. They are not law. Think about that one for just a minute. All these things they're telling you are law are not law. They're corporate bylaws. Therefore, for employees of the corporation to follow. Citizens. Citizen is a employee of the corporation. A citizen, person, and resident are 3 things you do not want to be, or you will be held accountable to every little rule, code, statute, and ordinance that they can make up or dream of. You know, they pass. There's millions of laws on the books. You're a criminal before you even get out of bed knowingly coerced into waiving their rights to do. And what a powerful case law that was. Okay? U.S. versus Tinker. Very powerful case law stating that you are constantly coerced to your own ignorance. If we are in jail because we consented to put ourselves there, I mean, like it or not, if they took your kids, it's because you consented to let them take your kids. So you have to learn to stop consenting, to stand up, to stand belligerently upon your rights. Only a righteous, lawful, living man or woman can have standing. So here we're challenging standing. See, they like to say all persons are equal in the law. Rich or poor, black or white, it doesn't matter. They're all equal. Well, that's because they're treating you all as dead. Dead in, okay? Dead in, you're all dead. When a living man or woman walks in the courtroom, they're the only one with standing. And I know I'm going to go through this much faster as we go deeper into it because a lot of it is repeat. So don't be scared that it's 90 pages and we're on page 17, okay? Because we don't have to go through all 90 pages for you to understand. Now, I expect you to, because if you're questioning in the court and you're questioning on this document, you better know what it says, okay? All government corporations, agencies, agents, officers, and every level of government, every state, county, municipality, and in every capacity must obey the Constitution and these treaties that they're brought forward into life. For this sunlight is this, that's this, that. In Genesis 2:7, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. That is what we are. We are a living soul. Our body is going to get buried, it's going to return to dust. But when we walk in this courtroom, we walk in alive, living soul, somebody competent, somebody who can stand and have standing. Now we're going to challenge status. What is status? Status is, are you a citizen, person, or a resident? Or are you a we the people? Are you a state national? It is your state, your fathers and grandfathers. You are the holder in due course, the rightful beneficiary. So it's your job to command the administrator as a fiduciary to settle and dismiss this matter. All of them are bankers. A court is a bank, a judge is a banker, a court clerk is a bank teller. If you're indicted, that's known as a true bill. If you can't pay the bill, you're brought up on charges. If you can't pay the charges, they're holding your body as surety for the bond. You can't pay the bond, they're going to collect from your Social Security trust, your birth bond. Everything is a banking term in the court diplomatic immunity to the laws, statutes of the United States. As long as you don't injure someone else or their property, you are a non-resident alien to the District of Columbia or to the International Monetary Fund. A citizen of the United States, simply dead entity operating as a co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the Public Charitable Trust, the QB Trust of the United States, Inc., under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of USA and USC. You are a debtor as a citizen. You are a creditor as a American state national. Learn the different advantages and the disadvantages. As a citizen, you have privileges. You can collect welfare. You can get housing for free phone. Okay? As an American state national, you stand on your own. You go out, you work, you earn a living, and you're free. And I'd rather be free than be beholden to government. Because being beholden to government is a very, very steep price. Like the loss of your children. Like being thrown in prison. Like having to obey every little tiny rule that they can come up with. Laws provide the whim of a politician. Okay? The defendant is supposed to try to get it. That means you're all caps name at the top of this document. And therefore, it's together. It doesn't have to show what's here, so it's incapable to earn money. So it's incapable is remedy. Profit. How about this trail regarding supposed detailed evidence that the earth belongs to you, to the living, that the dead have your powers, no rights over it. That was a letter from Thomas Jefferson to James Madison criticizing the Constitution. Why does that say the new Constitution? We even have another one that says the Constitution usurped the Articles of Confederation. Okay? That was the original Constitution for the United States. It's called the Articles of Confederation. I have awakened to the fact that his eye, the living man, his blood, sweat, and tears of his labor, the man, has been fraudulently held as surety as the debtor, when in reality it is I, the true holder in due course, and the creditor. See, you're waking them up. You're saying, look, you've got this debtor, this over here. I'm the man, I'm alive, and I'm the creditor over here. It is my credit that gave our government full faith and faith. I would like to remind you that the act either retaining the U.S. citizen or becoming one is voluntary. It's a voluntary revocable act according to the U.S. Supreme Court in the case of the United States versus Christian. All citizenship is a product of the intent and domicile. It is my intent to be a U.S. citizen. I may over my lifetime have to state without knowing it, check the little box on the form that I'm a U.S. citizen or file the 1040. That doesn't mean I am. In fact, the Supreme Court says I have to gone through the steps necessary to even become a citizen. Unless you're from another country and you went through the naturalization process, you're not a U.S. citizen. They are, but you're not. You're a state national. If I'm for public office in that state, while you're holding public office, you're a state citizen. You need to understand the different statuses in the United States and be the one you're supposed to be, not the one they presume you to be. Now we challenge jurisdiction. This is something many people do not understand. But in Genesis 1:26 or 28, God gave mankind dominion over three jurisdictions, the land, the air, and the water, and everything therein. That became the origin of law. Land, air, and water is law. Land is common law. Air is ecclesiastical law. Water is admiralty law. The United States government, or the United States of America, was founded on common law, and it became, with its incorporation, admiralty. And for a time there, they used both, and now they are pretty much all admiralty law. The common law exists within us as the people. I know this might be confusing to some, but it is very important to learn this. The first three testamentary trusts set aside the jurisdiction of the land, the air, and the water. That's a great way to understand the true meaning of the word jurisdiction, is to understand how it is set aside. Okay, and this explains it thoroughly. Definition of jurisdiction. Juris means law or right law. Diction means words. The words you use determine in which of the three jurisdictions you stand. You see, we are not well educated through the government public school and its public propaganda educational system. We learn only what they want us to learn. And because the overwhelmingly vast majority of government leaders are bar association members, attorneys, and lawyers, then how come we're not taught the language and jurisdiction differences of law? We should be taught that in 7th, 8th, 9th grade. You should have basic law classes in high school. Why? Because without a basic knowledge, we can't get by in this world. We're taken advantage of. We're taxed. We're taxed every time we're going in a courtroom. If you don't believe me that the courts are banks, go sit in a traffic court for 4 or 5 hours, and every time somebody walks up before the judge and he's fined $300, $190, $975, $1,150, just write those amounts down on a piece of paper and add up how much that bank collects in tax and in profit in a 4-hour period of time. I did that in a small town named Redmond, Oregon, and I sat there for 4 hours and I wrote it all down, and it was over $30,000 that court collected in 4 hours. Pretty good gig to get it, okay? So, is this fraud? It's constructed fraud, and it's definitely not full and honest disclosure of the facts. So what we're doing is we're calling out the fraud. We're calling out the language of jurisdiction. We're using God's superior law. Treaties and constitutions are supreme law. The Word of God is superior law. And we're using that in our documents to call out the fraud of their statutes. In Ephesians 6:12, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Almost every member of Congress and the Senate and every member of our judiciary are bar association members. That is where the true war is in this country. It is with the bar association. Governments have no jurisdiction over man. Governments have jurisdiction only over artificial entities and over its own employees. Inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction, and a creature of the mind only with other artificial persons, the imaginary, having neither actuality nor substance, is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible. These court cases show over and over again what our true jurisdiction is, how we can set ourselves aside. And Edwin, can you mute that? At the top of your page, there's a microphone. Mute your microphone. Okay. All right. the record in all proceedings. So if they don't have jurisdiction over you, they cannot proceed. The case must be dismissed. Okay, they have to have jurisdiction over the person and the subject matter. They don't have jurisdiction over you if you're a man or a woman. The case must be dismissed. You want your kids back? I'm showing you right here exactly how to get your kids back. You want to not go to jail? Here's how you not go to jail. This document can be used in traffic court. It can be used to get your kids back. It can be used to stop you from going to prison. It can be used after you're in prison to get you out. It can be used in a number of different ways.
Stop.
Okay? I'm not going to continue on and read all 90 pages. I expect you guys to do that. Now, in here you'll see that I use a book called The Doctrine and Covenants. It's a LDS book. And you're going to say, why do you use that? It's not law. Well, let me tell you something. It is law because it has been published for more than 150 years. There is hundreds of tens of millions of copies of it out there, if not hundreds of millions of copies. And it hasn't been refunded. Therefore, it is published law. Anything you publish for more than 21 days becomes a fact upon the record. And the reason I use it is because its words clearly state the differences between the law of the land and it being constitutional and man's laws, which cometh of evil. What do you think the law is? In American Jurist 2, Section 177, it says the general misconception is that any statute passed by a legislator bearing the appearance of law constitutes the law of the land. That's simply not true. The U.S. Constitution is the law of the land, and any statute to be valid must be in agreement with it, or it is held as invalid. It's void. It's void from the beginning. What does that mean? Does that mean that they make a statute that says the CPS can come in and take your kids under Title IV, that that's a law? Show me in the Constitution where it's a law. No, it's a voided law. So can they do that? No, they can't. Especially since they're not even a government agency. They are contracted. They are a private for-profit entity that is contracted. I mean, we got to stand up, people. A void act cannot be consistent with a valid one. An unconstitutional law cannot operate to supersede any existing valid law. Okay? Over and over and over again through here, I tell you these statutes are not law. And we use Supreme Court cases to show it. It is fraud. And the thing about fraud is this. At some point in time, it must be recognized. That means you could have been going through this process, and all of a sudden, you said, hey, wait a minute, I've learned something right here from this idiot Oregon, and I've learned that this whole thing is fraud. So, starting today, you can change it immediately. You don't have to keep going through their process. You don't have to keep signing their agreements. All of their agreements are fraud. Once you learn them, they must be disputed. They need to be voided from the beginning. This is a wonderful story about how we're caught up in this whole mess. The Sesta-Q.B. Trust Act. The living story of the fraud. My mother, a woman, a living soul, created by God of flesh and blood, very much alive, went into a foundling hospital. Around 1912, all hospitals and churches in the United United States were designated as foundling hospitals. The definition of the word foundling is a safe place to abandon a child. How does that make you feel? So she went into the foundling hospital believing she would get care, but instead was falsely declared indigent and a pauper. As part of foundling, being a safe place to abandon a child means you're indigent and pauper. You can't afford to take care of your baby. Then, having recently undergone the extreme duress of a major medical trauma known as childbirth, and under the influence of painkillers, anxious to go home to a comfortable bed and pursue a happy life with a beautiful newly born baby, she fills out some dubious and unexplained forms put before her. She is just told that it's just to give the baby a name and register it with the state. That's all she's told. No full and honest disclosure. So by the presumptive tacit agreement of government, she's coerced into signing them as an informant. If you look on your birth certificate line, you'll see the mother signed as an informant. The legal definition of the word informant is one that gives someone up to another. You're giving your baby away to the state to be registered, bonded, insured, titled, giving up the title to your child. Then they just send it home with you, and someday down the road, if they don't like the way you're taking care of it, if you're not keeping your house clean, or you put a bruise on it, or you don't send it to school, or you don't get it vaccinated, they can come into your house without any due process of law, no warrant, no nothing, and take your child, kidnap them, because they have title. They own them. You don't own them. So think about that for a little while. As a citizen, a person, a resident, by historical definitions are, citizen means city employee. Person is a dead legal entity or an office of person. And a resident is someone there temporarily to do business, which means you're in admiralty jurisdiction right from the get-go. And my innocent mother, thus failing to recognize the lifelong consequences of her action, as there was no full and honest disclosure or any meeting of the minds, which vitiates any contract, by the way. This form that my mother signed was fraudulently used to create a document of title, a bond, a insured security, was sent to the Department of Human Resources, registered as human capital. Slavery, jointly by the foundling hospital and by the state. This action created a copyright infringement and unlawful conversion of the given Christian-born name, converted to birth names, and bonded. Their attached custody numbers attached to the TV trust. A look-alike, sound-alike, constructed fraud. In other words, does David Lester Straight, all caps, sound like David Lester Straight, the man? Yes, it does. That's how they created this fraud. They made it look like you, sound like you, and it's not you. It's an entity, an office of. This section is where you put the information off your birth certificate, your birth record. You record the date and time. Why? Because this shows that you were born on one date and your entity was created on another date. Therefore, how could they be one and the same? This can be used in court along with your birth certificate to prove them wrong. Okay? Like I said, I am going to skip through this some just for the sake of time, and you guys probably are going to appreciate that. This whole next section talks about the septic QB trusts that were created with your birth, the public trust. Each and every man and woman has the absolute right to refute and reject these false presumptions as the holder of their own title. Given the private secret trust that the private simple banks are created on false presumptions, when a man or woman makes clear their live-born record and claim over their own name, body, mind, and soul, any such trust based on such false presumption ceases to have property rights. Any administrator or executor that refuses to immediately dissolve law of the Tuskegee Trust upon a person establishing their status and competency is guilty of fraud and fundamental breach of their fiduciary duties requiring their immediate removal and punishment.